All right, we are in the midst of a study of the individual characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit. Can you think of some of which we've covered already?
Love, joy, peace, patience.
Love, joy, peace, patience. Last week was kindness or generosity, I called it. Because that is a better translation of the word. Today is faithfulness or integrity. Anybody have a definition of integrity? What would be your definition?
Doing the right thing even though nobody's watching.
Doing the right thing even though nobody is watching.
Upholding what you believe, what's right.
Upholding what you believe is right and doing it. Defending it. 19-year-old Joey Prusak was on duty at Dairy Queen. He was behind the counter. This was up in Minnesota. A blind man had come in and placed an order. And as the man paid, a $20 bill slipped out of his pocket and fell to the floor. And the woman behind him quickly snatched up the $20 bill, stuffed it into her purse. When she stepped up to the counter, Joey asked her to return the money to the blind man. She refused. She claimed she dropped the money and just put it back in her purse. Joey knew better. He saw it. And when she still refused after a second request, he declined to serve her, told her to leave the store. Now, he remained calm as the woman blasted him with an angry tirade, stormed out the door. Joey went directly to the table where the man was eating, explained what happened, and gave him a $20 bill out of his own wallet. Someone caught the whole thing on video. It was a hit on Facebook for quite a while. Back a few months, or that's when I saw it on Facebook, and I'd always remembered it. That's quite impressive of a 19-year-old young man to do that. There have always been people who boast about getting away with it, who cut moral corners. In 2012, a successful businesswoman and investor named Amy Reese Anderson wrote a short article in Forbes magazine called "Success Will Come and Go, but Integrity is Forever." The article is about why integrity still matters. And she says this: "We live in a world where integrity isn't talked about nearly enough. We live in a world where the ends justify the means has become an acceptable school of thought for far too many. Some people overpromise and underdeliver, all in the name of making a quota for the month." And she goes on to give, and it's primarily about business people, but that's not the only place where integrity needs to be found. It needs to be found in all of our lives. And I really believe the word used here for faithfulness is better interpreted integrity. Integrity is telling the truth to yourself. That's the definition I've come up with. Telling the truth to yourself. Honesty is telling the truth to others. Integrity is telling the truth to yourself. It starts with what you tell yourself, at least. When you cut moral corners, there's always one person who knows the truth. And who is that? God. Okay, there's always two people who know the truth. Who are they?
You and God.
You and God. The Oxford Dictionary defines integrity as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. Synonyms include honesty, honor, fairness, sincerity. But if you read to the second definition, you get this: the state of being whole and undivided. Let that sink in for a moment. the state of being whole and undivided. What is the biblical term for integrity? Whole. W-H-O-L-E. That's the definition. That's Oxford's second definition. What is the biblical... Oh, you said holy. Gotcha. Anybody else? That's not bad. It's just not the one I'm thinking of. The biblical term for integrity. What is the characteristic of the fruit of the Spirit we're looking at?
Righteousness.
Some may call it righteousness. Some translations may call it faithfulness. It's called several things, but that's it. Faithfulness, righteousness, integrity. You open up the pages of the Old Testament, you're introduced to a faithful God almost immediately. Does God have integrity? Oh, absolutely. That's what He is by definition, right? He couldn't be, well, what's the opposite of integrity? Dishonest. He can't lie. What else would you say the opposite of integrity is?
Righteous and unfaithful.
Unrighteous, unfaithfulness.
Untrue.
Untrue. God can't be any of those things, can He? Do you remember a few years ago the insurance company that used the image of a gigantic rock? Was it Prudential? I don't know. I can't remember which one. I just remember the big rock. What did they want to get across with that message? They were solid. They were strong. Immovable, unbreakable strength, protection forever. We crave that in our lives. And who provides it? The insurance company? God. Deuteronomy 32 and verse 4. Deuteronomy 32 and verse 4. He is God. Deuteronomy 32 and verse 4. He is the rock. I think in that case you would capitalize the R for rock. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all His ways are justice. A God of truth and without injustice. Righteous and upright is He. All of those describe a faithful God, a God of integrity, a righteous God. But integrity isn't always easy, is it? It's deeply rewarding. It's deeply assuring. It has lots of benefits, positives, but it isn't always easy. If you have lived a life of taking moral shortcuts, you've got a heavy burden. That burden weighs on you, pushes you further and further down into moral decay. You have to renounce your dishonesty, repent from it, turn back to God, make amends where you can. It's a difficult road. But I'd like you to take a few minutes and think about integrity. What is it exactly? Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says integrity is the value you place on yourself. What value do you place on you? It is sometimes described as fidelity, sometimes steadfastness. It always means the determination of you standing by your word, completing your commitment. Now we're going to step on toes this morning. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, why else do you come to class? step on other people's toes. Faithfulness, integrity is not just about God. It should also be descriptive of us, correct? If we have the fruit of the Spirit, and by the way, I don't think I've pointed this out in class. I did on one of the first videos back before we were meeting again. The fruit of the Spirit is not a buffet. You don't pick and choose, okay, I'll take some of this, but I don't like patience. I don't have any of that. I'm not taking that, but I'll take some faithfulness and some love. That's not the way it works. It's a package deal. If the Spirit has taken up residence in your heart, you should display these characteristics individually and collectively. Would it shock you to know, if I counted correctly, in the New Testament only 8 people are described specifically as being faithful? I'm not saying there weren't others. Only 8 have that descriptive attached to them. Lydia, Timothy, Paul, Tychicus, Epaphras, Onesimus, Silvanus, Antipas. They're the only ones with that descriptive that I could find that are specifically said to be faithful. Did you recognize all those names?
No.
That's the point. You don't have to be one of the, rich is not the right word, but famous in the Scriptures. You don't have to be the well-known of Scripture to be faithful. You can be an average, ordinary Christian and be faithful. Have integrity. Integrity isn't reserved for what culture perceives as greatness or importance. It's honored by God no matter who you are. If you live a quiet, humble life and you're full of integrity, you're special to God. If you suffer, if you endure persecution, you remain faithful, full of integrity, you're special to God. But if you go through life with relative ease and you maintain your integrity, you're still special to God. Integrity is not reputation. It's not others' opinion about you. You can say about someone else they have integrity. Does that mean they have integrity? No, it means they may have you fooled. So it's not reputation. It isn't success. It isn't accomplishments. What is integrity exactly?
Conversion of the heart.
A what?
It's a conversion of the heart.
A conversion of the heart, okay? Anybody else?
Integrity to me is like something happens, something comes up, and you don't decide, well, I'll do it this way or that way. Integrity will lead you because of past or whatever, will lead you, I wouldn't do that.
It leads you on the right road, doing the right thing always.
Figure it out.
You don't have to figure it out. There's not really much of a choice. When your choices are right and wrong, integrity takes the right road.
It's like that young man.
Yes, like the young man at the beginning of the story, of the lesson.
I think you get on this point, and I think it's, I highly agree with it. That doesn't make it necessarily right, but I highly agree with it. But it does make sense to me. what sometimes we do with parrot things, we go through, we take options. We decide on what's best, do this, do that. And we have a tendency to think, well, if I go through these particular ideas or thoughts or directions or whatever they may be, and we do it this way, then that's integrity. But most of those are forced on us. Otherwise, it has to do with our, what we're going to get out of the deal. So rather, a lot of times integrity is actually damaging to you as an individual. It could be financial, it could be reputation, etc.
It's not always the easy way. It's not the easy road. It could lead you down some difficult paths.
We make a lot of decisions. I think individuals make a lot of decisions what's best for them. It has nothing to do with what's in their heart. They just choose the best method at this particular time.
Yeah. Integrity avoids such things, for example, as slander. And you think, yeah, I agree with that. But how many of us will slander someone else this week? Perhaps unintentionally, but slander nonetheless. Or gossip. A person of integrity doesn't gossip. But how many of us will gossip this week? Because we're so used to it. So let me ask you again, are we, or maybe this is the first time I've asked it, are we people of integrity? That's not an out loud answer, that's an internal answer. Am I really a person that has integrity?
Can we go on percentages?
I suppose.
Strive.
Pardon?
How about if we strive?
We strive to have integrity.
When I was in grade school, my grade school at Carbondale, they had the saying of Giant City Pride, and pride meant polite, respectable, and then integrity, dependability, and courage. And my principal, I still remember this from my
Well, it was only 3 or 4 years ago.
right, I know. But my principal in 6th grade was like, integrity is what puts all of them together, and that's the most important one.
Okay?
Roddy,
Mm-hmm.
in your story that you were talking about that young man, I think that lady sold her integrity for $1.
Yeah.
And you can replace the money for any other subject. You can sell your integrity for just that one gossip that day. You can sell it for that one lie you told about a fellow Christian or someone else that day.
Mm-hmm.
What are you willing to part with for your integrity follows that? So what are you willing to hold on to keep that integrity?
Yeah. You bring to mind a story I'm going to tell you. I was a single dad, 2 young children. We were going on vacation, not because I could afford it, because it was a congregation that was paying me, but I wasn't really working, making, the check didn't last all week. You ever had one of those jobs? But I had promised we were going on vacation. We went into Kmart. It kind of dates it a little bit. We went into Kmart on the way out of town to pick up a few things for the road trip. My son goes into the stall of the bathroom, and there is sitting on the toilet paper holder a wallet. And he says, Dad, and he came and got me and said, I found somebody's wallet. And he had looked in it, and it had about $700 in it, $100 bills. And it had an ID, it had a driver's license, and it was I'm going to say older gentleman. I don't remember exactly how old, what year he was born, but my conclusion was he needed this money. I could use it. We were going on vacation. I really didn't have the money. But I wanted to teach my son a lesson on integrity. So I said, okay, let's go find it there, because the gentleman's address was on it, on his driver's license. So we took him his wallet. And then we headed out of town. Now, I often ask myself, would I have done that if my son wasn't with me?
What's your answer?
I sure hope I would have done it. I think I would have. I sure hope so.
Couldn't have lived with yourself if you had.
Wouldn't have lived with myself. You're looking at a guy who can't cheat at cards. You know, my family gets together and plays rook. You don't want to play. They cheat like dogs. I can't stand cheating at board games. But I wanted to teach a lesson on integrity.
Roddy, I had it back years ago in the early 60s. You guys didn't know I was that old. But, anyway, I was driving the bus to the city of Chicago. And as I was coming up to a stop on Northwestern Avenue, I noticed that a wallet lay in the street. So I hit the bus just to a point where I could cover it. So I got out and I grabbed the wallet, got back in the bus, and I opened it up, and it had about $35 in it. But it had no identifications. So I said, hey man, I hit the jackpot. So I took the $35 and I stick it in my pocket. And then something said to me, you know, a lot of times those wallets have secret compartments. So I just grabbed the wallet and jerked it like that. And when I did, there was the driver's license, identification, and then it flowed about $35. So then that's when the integrity had to take over, because at that time I was a Christian, and probably as I've been known years before, I'm not sure that it worked that way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I then had to call and make all arrangements for them to put the money in the wallet and everything like that. I always thought, son, you were $35 better off if you hadn't just tried to look for the secret compartment. But you got to do what you got to do.
Integrity is like that. It keeps confidences. It doesn't falsely impugn others. It doesn't impugn their integrity or their motives. Well, this gets tough. It speaks appropriately about others. It treats others well. Integrity is not always easy. Warren Buffett, Chairman and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, described the significance of integrity. He said, we look for three things when we hire people. We look for intelligence, we look for initiative, and we look for integrity. Integrity is one of those things that's a little bit hard to define. It has lots of shades, lots of meanings. It covers a lot of ground, but it's always telling the truth to yourself. It's always about honesty. It's being honest with self. So if you look at yourself and you say, you know, I'm not that filled with integrity, but I want to be. Where do you start? Jerry White wrote a book called Honesty and Morality. And in that book, he tells a story of baseball player Ted Williams. He says, when Ted Williams was 40 years old and closing out his career with the Boston Red Sox, he was suffering from a pinched nerve in his neck. He said, it was so bad I could hardly turn my head to look at the pitcher. He said, I never had any problem with them about money, and they were offering me the largest contract yet. I didn't deserve that much money. I only wanted what I deserved. I asked them to cut it in half. So he signed for a contract of $31,250. Is that integrity? Being honest with yourself. David once asked God to help him with this. Turn over to the 139th Psalm. By the way, $31,000 is not even half of prorated these days. If you follow baseball news, prorated is a big term. Psalm 139. 139. And let me get on my pet peeve. I always take a chance to do this. Somebody corrected me once, so I'm going to correct you. It is not Psalms 139. There's only one, Psalm 139. All of them together, or more than one, would be Psalms, but just one is Psalm.
I said it doesn't sound right.
O Lord, beginning with verse 1. O Lord, you have examined my heart, and you know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts, even when I'm far away. We know the passage, right? Is there anything about you that God doesn't know? He knows it all. Look down at verse 23. Search me, O God. Search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Is that integrity? Search me and try me, O God. Test me. Do a moral inventory of yourself is one thing. Doing a moral inventory of yourself is one thing. Asking God to do it is another. Hold yourself accountable, but let God hold you accountable as well. I wish there were an easier place to start, but I'm afraid there isn't. This is where integrity starts. This is where faithfulness starts. What is confession, by the way? You know, we're told to confess our sins. What is confession?
Acknowledging your own flaws.
Acknowledging your own flaws. Why? Why do we confess?
It relieves a guilt, a hardness or something.
It relieves a guilt, a hardness, a burden, a weight.
I think it brings truthfulness to the heart.
It brings truthfulness to the heart.
Keeps us in check so we don't continue down that path.
Keeps you in check.
You know, someone who lies without knowing it, they're not probably not confessing. Who believes their own lives.
Mhm.
The pathological liar.
Yep.
And there comes a point where maybe that could have been prevented.
Okay.
That's how I think of it.
Yep.
You know what? I thought I have a relative. I have a relative that falls in that category. That there's nothing truth that comes out of her mouth.
Well, don't say the name because it's being videoed.
I lied.
So far, you haven't said the name. I don't think it can hear you anyway, but go ahead.
Anyway, the person
So we
that does that, I don't think the person knows that they're convinced of every lie they tell.
Sure.
They don't know. It just seems like they have gotten so confused that it's just automatic. Whatever comes to their mind, they tell. And
Yeah.
I don't think they're anywhere near what David was talking about, certain people teaching and otherwise ranking my
Your conscience can get so seared, you don't even know you're lying anymore. Yes. Confession basically means saying the same thing about your sin that God is saying. It's agreeing with God. I've done this. I know it's wrong. I'm in agreement with God. It isn't so that God will find out. He already knows. So there has to be another meaning, another intent behind confession.
A lot of that scenario you brought out about the young man and the money, I think the biggest problem would be the woman being able to admit that she was caught actually stealing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than fight, trying to prove that, I think that's her biggest problem.
Yep. Couple of Proverbs. Proverbs 11:3 and Proverbs 12:22. Let's look at those briefly. Proverbs 11:3. By the way, I found this out on my computer, which is a relatively new computer. You can no longer type 11:3 or anything :3. It creates an emoji. It won't let me put anything :3. It turns into a smiley emoji. Automatic. I don't know how to turn it off. If you know, I invite you to come turn it off because I hated it. I had to put 11-3. You can't put 11:3. And for an OCD guy like me, that doesn't work. But I had no other option. Proverbs 11:3. The integrity of the upright will guide them, but the perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. The integrity of the upright will guide them. The perversity of the unfaithful will destroy them. Next page, Proverbs 12:22. Maybe, depending on the size of your font. Proverbs 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are His delight. Aren't both of those talking about integrity? When you are a person of integrity, you are more like God. Titus 1:2 tells us God can't lie. When you speak the truth, you don't have to look over your shoulder in fear. You're not always having to cover your tracks. Truthfulness is at the core of integrity. It's not a license to say anything you want anytime as long as it's true, though, because that's not integrity, is it?
I said food burst out with folly.
Okay?
So I think if you say anything that comes to your mind, if you know it's truthful, I think that's with folly.
Yeah, integrity is more than just truthfulness. It also involves grace, mercy, maturity.
That's how you keep marriages together.
Yes, it is.
I looked this morning, dear. Oh, wonderful.
You're on video again. You keep forgetting.
You can put a sign up there.
That's right. Jesus spoke the truth, and He wasn't bashful about the truth, but He spoke it with a maturity, a sense of grace. There was a time to confront and a time to speak with authority, and there was a time to speak with a certain grace. But it was always truth, wasn't it? There was a maturity. There was a love. We know people who are full of grace and not much truth. They're nice, they're warm and fuzzy, but there's no truth. Are they reliable? On the other hand, we know people who have truth but no grace. Nobody wants to listen to them. Before leaving Mount Vernon to assume the presidency in the spring of 1789, George Washington wrote, "Integrity and firmness is all I can promise. These are the voyage, long or short." He was surrounded by brilliant men, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, many more. They all looked at him with a certain sense of integrity. What was it about him that consistently earned him his peers' trust and admiration? They knew that whatever he said was going to happen, or he was going to die trying.
I think if you're governed by integrity, that usually falls within every area of your life that is governed by that particular trait, which would seem to exude a bit of confidence in yourself and probably others around you. Mm-hmm. It would show.
Mm-hmm. Here's another definition of integrity. It takes it to the edge. Integrity is keeping a commitment after the circumstances under which the commitment have changed. Now think about it. Keeping a commitment even though the circumstances have changed. Let me give you an example of that. And this is just a story. I don't know if it's true or not. It's very short, only a couple of sentences. But a store owner interviewed a young man for a job. And he said, "If I hire you to work in my store, will you be honest and truthful?" The young man said, "I'll be honest and truthful whether you hire me or not." So the point is, even when the circumstances change, will you still be a person of integrity? Will you still hold your commitment? In the ancient Greek theater, actors wore masks, molded or painted with set expressions to depict the persona of their character. The actors were called what? Hypocrites. That's the Greek word, hypocrite. They were actors. If you are a person of integrity, if you are authentic, you don't have to wear a mask to hide who you are. You don't adjust your persona. You don't modify your standards to fit whatever group or situation you're in. You're the same. You're you. You act by the same standard wherever you are. The you at church should be the you at home. It should be the you at work. It should be the you when you're on the internet or when you're posting on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I have a lot of very dear friends. I shouldn't say a lot, some. They seem to forget they're Christians when they post things on the internet. They'll even use language that they don't or wouldn't use in church. John Wesley was asked by a woman what he would do if he knew at midnight the next night he would die. He said, "If I knew that I was going to die tomorrow night, I wouldn't change anything. I would preach here this morning, I would preach wherever he was going to next tonight, and I would preach the next place tomorrow. because that's who God called me to be. I wouldn't change anything. I'm going to be faithful to what God called me to do. Remember that second definition in the Oxford Dictionary? Time is up. The bell's about to ring if there is a bell. What was that second definition? Do you remember? Whole, undivided. What does that mean? After having spoken of all of this, what does that mean? Integrity is being whole, undivided. Your whole self. What else?
Just that, whole.
You're whole. Your life isn't divided into compartments. You're not this way over here and this way over there and this way with these people and this way with those people. You're whole and undivided. You're always complete. One. Wherever and whatever situation. I like that definition of integrity. Final thoughts?
James kind of described that as a double-minded man.
Good point.
What did it say?
The book of James describes it as being double-minded. Instead of being double-minded, be whole, be undivided.